All right. What is going on, everybody? It is Monday night, not Wednesday, which is what we usually come live to you from Wednesday nights, but we're doing a special edition Monday Night Live tonight. And we're going to talk about the NRC vote that happened last Thursday. So we've got some guys on tonight. We're going to discuss that. Hope everybody had a great weekend, especially the moms. Hopefully, all had a great Mother's Day. Got to be celebrated, and it's a warm one out there today, though, isn't it? Jordan, how warm did it get up by you today?
Oh, the glaciers are melting, and I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, I was just thinking I need to move further north. Sounds like further north than you, even. But
Yeah, it
we
should
got
have turned into a burner today. I mean, we're funny as Yoopers, right? Because we spend all winter complaining. It's dark, it's cold. I can't wait for spring. Spring gets here. What do? We complain about how hot it is. There's no pleasing us.
I think that's the same for Robert and I. Robert, how you doing today?
Not too bad. Surviving the heat. We didn't get quite as hot as Jordan did up there, but we were pretty close down here.
Yeah, glaciers didn't start melting.
Not quite.
All right. Not quite. Did you go out turkey hunt today at all, Robert, or did you throw in the bag because of how hot it was going to be?
No, I went out this morning and I called it about. It's probably about 8:30. It was almost 65 degrees, and there wasn't a peep out of anything out there. It was just quiet. So threw in the towel and called it a day.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, tonight we have a special guest joining us. We have Josh Arbogast joining us. Josh, how are you this evening?
I'm well, man. I'm feeling good. Feeling real good.
Awesome. Well, for those of you that don't know Josh, Josh is a Michigan hunter. He's been an advocate for what's been going on with the NRC, uh, positive change here. So, Josh, if you could just give us a little rundown about yourself, about your hunting career, and about your just recent involvement, with advocating for the changes.
Okay. Yeah. Josh Arbogast. I'm 35 years old, about to be. I've been hunting, man, since mid 20s, probably early 20s. It was something I kind of turned to. I was kind of an athlete, and I just kind of found an outlet in the outdoors. I was fisherman my whole life, and really, really dived into deer hunting as I, hit that early adulthood, I guess, started running with it. And man, it just bit me, and it became something I was really passionate about. Um, and then within, the past couple of years, I really just, I started going out of state and started hunting other states and things like that. And I started to really dive into, our deer herd and the things that we're missing and the things, areas we can improve in what I'm seeing in my experiences, not only in Michigan, but my experiences in Indiana and Illinois and Ohio, and, you know, talking to COs in other states and things of that nature, and just, kind of developing my own ideas of Michigan and kind of the things that are going on. And really led me to dive in. And as the deeper I dove, the more interested I got, the more interested I really got into like the biology of the whitetail and things that were going on. And, you know, I started kind of reaching out to my fellow hunters around the same age group as me and started having these conversations on, conservation and deer and all this different stuff. And I, the more deep that I dove, it was like one day I get this call from Jordan Hoover, and he's like, "Hey man, what are you doing down there?" And, we sparked up a conversation. I think it was like an hour and a half, and we really started talking about the NRC and all that jazz. And it just kind of took away from there. And as soon as kind of time allotted me, I really dived into learning about how all the regulations break down and how we got here and things that we could do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh, I know I've seen it on social media before, but you're really using that pillar for your platform, and I've seen you put together some really good reels and just, help, use that platform to raise your voice, raise your concerns. if people wanted to see some of your content that you put out there, what pages or what avenues can they take to see what you're doing?
Yeah. So, my whole social media kind of started. I had this page a couple years ago. It was the non-typical, and that's still kind of my personal page on Instagram. But as I started putting out all this more facts and data, I started a page called the Michigan Whitetail Project, and that kind of came after I tried to do like a Facebook outreach group that was Michigan Deer Hunters for Change. And when I started the Instagram page and started compiling all these like facts and data and things that we can kind of get from the DNR, and it was mostly to change the narrative, right? Make the DNR maybe not the enemy of the people, bring everybody together and on the same page. So then I compiled both pages recently into the Michigan Whitetail Project, and that's where you can pretty much find all that data and snippets and things of that nature.
Okay. Yeah, definitely check him out, guys. He puts together some real good stuff. You definitely have a creative mind to it also, which, captivates the audience and just really good at, putting your words together and driving home a point. So I highly recommend everybody go there and check it out. So last Thursday at 9 a.m., correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has been kind of a point of contention before, but obviously not the most ideal day or time for most Michiganders to head to those meetings live and in person. But Jordan and Josh were both there. So Jordan, why don't you go first? Talk about, the momentum leading up to that day, especially you being the chair of the DAT in the Upper Peninsula. Just kind of give us a feel for the momentum and the vibes going into last Thursday, what you thought was going to happen and what your hopes were.
Sure, Tim. Before I jump into that, which is just going to be a fantastic discussion, by the way, I wanted to let our listeners know that I'm keeping my word on something I talked about. I talked about the accessibility issue for the working class hunter to be able to show up before the NRC, the Natural Resources Commission, and be heard, to share their views, share their opinions, share their heart. And I am actively working with the legislature, and there will be a bill crafted addressing this issue. And the attempt will be to move commission meetings to a Saturday and to provide a virtual option for Upper Peninsula residents as well. So that is something that is currently in the hopper, currently being worked on. I don't have exact details and exact language for you, but I just want to let everybody know that is actively being pursued. So
awesome.
My goodness, Thursday was an absolute bombshell of the best kind. It took a couple of days for the reality of what actually happened to truly sink in and for me to really register it. Because for me, this battle began 10 years ago. In 2015, the decision was made to revoke the archery doe tag on the combo license in the Superior watershed. And, that's something that we've talked a little bit on the show about before. I'm not going to dive into all the biology heavy discussion here tonight, but, we had a couple of bad winners, and a lot of the older stakeholder group leadership kind of wrung their hands and said, well, we got to do something. What should we do? Well, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, that sounds good. And that's just about how scientific it was. I said I wouldn't go biological, so I won't. You got to hold me to it, Tim, because it's easy for me to get on that slippery slope and dive right into the facts and the data. So that was something that last year in the DMI, our team wanted reinstated, and we passed it by majority. We crafted a resolution. We made that recommendation as part of our package to the commission. And unfortunately, there was some dirty deeds behind closed doors, and the wishes of the Deer Management Initiative were undermined and disregarded. And I think you guys probably remember what a bombshell that was. I think we did an interview for the first time back around that time period. It was a big deal. these two advisory teams, the DMI for the UP and the LP, both spent an exorbitant amount of time and effort, blood, sweat, and tears. We met 2 nights a week for 2 hours a shot. We listened to presenters and speakers from all over the place on different subjects pertinent to deer predation, nutrition, habitat. It was exhaustive. And when things went the way they did with the DMI last year, everybody was just deflated. I think the DNR was deflated, and it was gut wrenching, obviously, for those of us that were involved in the DMI personally, to have invested all that time and effort seemingly for nothing. Obviously, hunters around the state weren't satisfied, and there were some people that kind of laughed and said, well, what did you expect? The DNR and the NRC don't listen. So then this year, the DNR actually took over the advisory team, and that's a distinction a lot of people don't understand, is that last year the DMI fell under the leadership of the Natural Resources Commission directly, whereas this year the DATs are led by the department, by Chad Stewart personally. So there's obviously a different tone and a different tenor to discussion, and just he does things differently. There's an extremely heavy biological emphasis, and it was clear from the onset that whatever we do has got to be grounded in science, defensible with data, which for me, that's music to my ears. That's proposal G, right? That's the rock we live and die on. So we convened the DATs. We had a relatively short time frame to work. We actually had to have our final recommendations in the commission's hands by mid-March. So we had January, February, and basically a week of March, and we had to be done for 2025. It was pretty rapid fire. But once again, a very important issue to my team for a second go around was getting that archery doe tag option reinstated for the UP, which we haven't had in 10 years. And that's a cross I've personally carried for a long, long time. Even before my involvement in the advisory teams, that's an issue I pursued passionately for the full span of 10 years. And, that recommendation, amongst others, of course, went to the commission and the department in March, and everything came to a head last Thursday. That was where the metal hits the meat, if you will. That was the vote, the big day. Obviously, I've been around this a long time. I know my way around the nooks and crannies of how the system works. And you have an inclination of how things are going to go, but you don't ever really know. You really don't. Until the votes are cast, it's anybody's guess. And, we only had 5 commissioners present because the newly appointed chair, Dan Kildee, actually ended up resigning. And we had 1 commissioner that was absent, Dave Nyberg. So we had 5 present. And a lot of people thought that would mean we only needed 3 yes votes for passage of whatever issue was at hand. But in fact, you need 4 because it's majority of those serving. So even though Commissioner Nyberg was absent, he still counts towards the total. There was some passionate testimony from some of my fellow Yoopers that weren't happy. They're the same people that weren't happy last year. They'll be the same people that probably aren't going to be happy next year. And I'm okay with that. We don't all have to agree. I think it's important that we recognize it's okay to disagree. And disagreement doesn't have to be fatal. We can have different viewpoints, and we can express those viewpoints respectfully, professionally, tactfully, and we can move on. And I think that even though there was a lot of passion around the issue, that on the whole, I didn't see anybody get out of line. Nobody broke decorum or anything like that. You could tell that there was a lot of emotion, and that's to be expected. Ultimately, the vote passed on a 4-1 line, and I couldn't have been more excited. Like I said, that's the culmination of 10 years worth of work for me. And it was special. It was really special. And, there were some other things that got done for the UP as well. UP and LP both regained the ability for the Liberty and Independence Hunt participants to harvest a buck. It will not be doe only. So that was a big win for a lot of folks. The UP also got late archery season restored back to the traditional January 1st date instead of December 10th. And then Commissioner John Walters also proposed an amendment that I'm trying to learn a little bit more about right now. And that was beseeching the DNR to develop an educational platform and program to teach the public more about the importance of antlerless harvest and the value of the doe. So that'll be interesting to see what's in that package, what that educational pyramid looks like, and how that's executed, because I don't have any details yet. But I did think it was a good amendment. I don't think providing educational opportunities is ever a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was there was a lot of build up till Thursday, and we know probably a little bit more than others, but Jordan is a very vocal and visual man, and Jordan has really put himself out there because he's very passionate about deer and conservation. And Jordan, number one, thank you for your hard work. We see what you did, especially behind the scenes here at MOR. Just everything you did, all the phone calls, I'm sure the late nights, the expense, everything that you took on to get this reinstated. And we know it was a special day for everybody in Michigan with everything that got voted in. And I know a lot of UP residents are very happy to have that doe tag back. But I know that was an extra special day for you. We saw the celebrations and the smiles, and that was awesome. So number one, thank you, Jordan, for everything. Now switching over, Josh, kind of the same thing. What were some things that were pressing for you that you were hoping to see come out of last Thursday, and just kind of talk about, the build into Thursday and as the day progressed. I believe you spoke at the meeting too. Just kind of talk about that whole piece, and then just your reaction to the vote.
Yeah. So, man, it was a special day. It really was. It was a lot of fun. But going into that day, Lower Peninsula, we didn't have really a whole lot of serious regulation changes on the table. We had the youth harvest being changed back. That was, something that I really wanted to speak to. I thought that was important. I just don't think that the numbers support what they did in taking it. If the numbers were something like 50% of harvest, right? Like that would make a difference. But we're talking about 2% of hunters and hunter recruitment. So I didn't think that the numbers supported it. So I wanted to see that reinstated to the way that it was. But that was really all we had going on. There was 3 amendments leading up to that I was kind of going over at the hotel, and 2 of them got canceled like right from the get at the beginning of the meeting. So it was just kind of, showing up to support. The big part of it was showing up to support Jordan and what they were trying to do in the UP. I brought 5 guys with me. We all kind of talked beforehand. One of the guys actually showed up, and he was a surprise to me. I didn't know this was something, a long chain of, kind of text and communication that we have going back and forth with each other on who can make these meetings. And one of the guys calls me, and I was at the gas station getting a coffee, and he's like, "Where you at?" And I was like, "Man, I'm on my way. Just wait for me." So that was, a good surprise. And when I got up there during public comment section, I just wanted to be clear that the first thing I said was I supported doe with a bow. And that's as a sportsman. This is about unity, and we were trying to be on a unified front. And I'd love to see that going forward. There are disagreements, and there are people that don't believe in everything. But when it comes to the biology of the whitetail, like, there's no denying most facts. Like, facts are going to be facts. Science is science. And I think most of us that showed up with my group, we were just all in support of everything Jordan was trying to do. So, we'll help our guys up in the UP. And then hopefully when it comes to changes for us down here, maybe in that 26 season, maybe Jordan will throw some support our way, and we're on that unified front again.
One of the
Absolutely.
things that really spoke to me through this whole process is that in my lifetime, I have never seen so many hunters and so many different groups unify under one cause. We've been our biggest enemy for as long as I can remember, because we're too busy killing each other over the minutia of whatever regulation. Well, we need APRs. No, we need $1. No, we need to earn $1. No, we need, and like Josh said, you're not going to get everybody to agree on everything. But what I saw is people looked into this archery doe tag situation, and it was so much bigger than just the UP issue. Well, yeah, the Upers. We didn't get written off. It mattered. It wasn't just this tiny little issue over there that doesn't affect me. People saw the reality that sound science was at issue, that there was a proposal G component here, and that what was biologically proper wasn't being done. And people said, you know what? That's not okay. I mean, we had 7 letters from deer organizations all around the state written to the DNR director and the commission supporting this. We had, a signed letter from numerous legislators, Democrats and Republicans alike, House and Senate alike. We had stakeholder group leaders that were part of national entities in support of this. We had guys like Josh Arbogast, who just literally climbed down out of the tree stand and threw their hat in the ring, that didn't represent anybody but themselves. It was an incredible thing to bear witness to. And it's hard for me to put into words the emotions that were in that room that day when the chairwoman slammed the gavel down and said, "We're adjourned." I mean, I think there was two solid rows of hunters that literally sprang up out of their seats and hugged each other and shook hands and literally cried. The emotions were powerful. You had to be there to experience it. And it is my hope that this is a foundation stone that we build on moving forward, because it isn't just about doe with the bow. It isn't just about the UP. It's so much bigger. We proved to ourselves as a fraternity that we know how to act right. And when we do, look what we can accomplish. Look what we can do. There's so many more things that we can do together. 2026, I think, is going to be a fantastic year. And I really do believe in my heart that you're going to see some big, aggressive, meaningful changes in 2026 in both peninsulas. Now's the time. In the past, as you pointed out, Tim, I am a very vocal guy, and I'm going to tell you like it is. Some people like that, some people don't. And I've been a very vocal critic of some of the NRC commissioners in the past and the decisions that they made. So now I have to be vocally supportive and offer encouragement, because what I saw on Thursday is the commissioners followed the science. They adhered to their mandate, Proposal G. They took the advice of the advisory teams. They did what they were tasked to do. And it should encourage the sportsmen and women across the state of Michigan that maybe we don't have a rogue bureaucracy that's just out to destroy hunting. Maybe it's different. Maybe the people that we have on this commission now have a different way of doing business, a different way of thinking, and maybe we're going to turn over a new leaf. I think there's cause for optimism. And, I don't want to say that I'm necessarily whole hog converted, because, the commissioners are human beings that are fallible. They make mistakes the same as we do. But I certainly saw a commission that seemed to be different than anything I saw before. And, another great thing is that I think this was a great encouragement for the advisory teams and for the DNR, because you got to remember, a lot of people confuse the DNR and the NRC. They'll say, well, did you hear what the DNR did? Well, the DNR doesn't do anything. The commission does. They're the ultimate authority. They make the decisions. And it's got to be absolutely gut-wrenching to be DNR biologist in charge of whatever discipline, be it geese or smallmouth bass or squirrels or turkeys or deer, and you go before the commission and you present your facts and your data that you've devoted your life's work to have them thumb their nose. That has got to be utterly heartbreaking. And I saw DNR employees that were seemingly encouraged and uplifted by what they saw on Thursday as well. And that's great to see. The advisory teams are obviously going to have a feather in their cap because they're like, hey, wow, our input matters. This is a good thing. Maybe there's a reason to keep going. I think there's a whole snowball of positives that came out of Thursday. And like I said, it is so much bigger than one regulation. And I hope really it just serves as a springboard for really good things moving forward in 26 and beyond.
Yeah, I want to add something real quick. To add to what you said on the snowball effect, one thing that I really noticed was a lot of guys just like myself, independents, who we don't belong to an organization. But for so long, I think we've had the notion that these people don't listen to us. And after that meeting and after, all the posts and all the happiness, guys started to see that. And they're like, well, maybe I will get involved. Maybe I will come to one of these things. If they're actually going to listen to me, then maybe I will show face. And it just adds to that change. It really does. It's not like a negative thing to go to an NRC meeting and be ignored right now because there was a snippet of listening. And guys see that. It was a big deal. It was huge.
Yeah, I think if you look at the contrast, and Robert, I kind of want to pick your brain for a second because I know Robert watches the meetings as they're streamed from MUCC. But when you look at the contrast from the 2024 to 2025, I mean, as Jordan referred to earlier, the 2024 vote was just it was a sight to behold, and not in a positive way. And to actually see them take Proposal G serious this time and not asking during the vote, hey, is that what you wanted? That definitely is encouraging, and it builds confidence amongst the sportsmen. So, Robert, as you watched the meeting unfold and the vote unfold, what were your thoughts? Because I know you watched it in 2024 and saw that. So what did you think this year?
Yeah, 2024 was a total train wreck. And if anybody says otherwise, obviously they did not watch that meeting. I would say the difference this year, especially watching the vote and everything go down with the meeting, and also keeping an eye on the comments that are coming in. It's kind of like Josh said, I would second it, seeing sportsmen come forward and voice their opinion and actually come out of the room with a win. To me, it seems like it's a huge drive now. You're going to have a lot more guys that are going to want to get involved. And one of the biggest things with what, like Jordan said, is the times of the meetings. It's the middle of the week. Not a lot of guys can get to in the middle of the week. And there was a lot of people in the comments that were saying, oh, I'd love to be there, but I can't leave work. If it was a Saturday or a Sunday or something, I could be there, but I can't be there. So, I think the momentum going forward is going to be really good. And truthfully, watching what unfolded this year with everything in the UP, it should shed a little bit of light that, if you're like Jordan and you show up and you stomp on the ground and you get in the room and speak, they're going to listen. And eventually they don't have a choice but to listen if you keep showing up. And if you keep adding numbers of more and more sportsmen coming in there, then obviously they're going to be like, okay, something needs to change here. We need to make some changes, or, I think this year has been a really, really big positive. Hopefully we can keep this momentum going and actually get the changes that we need.
You got to start somewhere, right? And like Josh said, for the longest time, we didn't feel like our voices were being heard because, right in front of all of us, they're telling us what Proposal G, what how they're coming up with their decisions. And one of the biggest farces that they did last year was eliminate the opportunity for our youth, our veterans to harvest the buck. And thank God that got reversed. How they ever came up with that in the first place is beyond me, but a step in the right direction. So now let's take this momentum and I want to talk to you guys. So what are we looking at? We know 2025 is pretty much said and done. So now looking forward to 2026. What are some things that maybe got tabled that'll get pushed back to next year, or some other things that you guys are hearing that the Upper Peninsula and Lower Peninsula both want to work towards and initiate for 2026?
As far as formal capacity within the advisory teams, myself and the Lower Peninsula chairman, Mike Kettlar, we're going to sit down with Chad Stewart here this week, and we're going to start game planning, a meeting schedule, kind of a timeline of events, key issues to tackle. So we're going to start that conversation pretty shortly here. No rest for the wicked. We get done with 25 and we're right back to work. I don't want to tip my hand too much. I mean, obviously nothing is set in stone, but I will say there's been a lot of loose discussion about the possibility of going to $1. That's a conversation that's been ongoing in the Lower Peninsula. It's a conversation that's been occurring in the Upper Peninsula as well. I fully expect that there will be heavy engagement on that topic. And buck regs in general, I think, are going to get a heavy dose of attention in 2026. Here in the Upper Peninsula also, and we've had this discussion before about our deer winter complexes, the terrible condition of our winter habitat for our bucks here. That's going to be a monstrous issue that we're going to take a deep dive into in 26 on the UP DAT. What do we need to do to make things right for our DWCs? And obviously, as I've spoken to before many times when I've talked about this issue, this is something that we should have been addressing 30 years ago, and we haven't. And unfortunately, it's going to be an issue that continues to be dealt with by those that come after me. The scope and breadth of the issue will succeed my life, but I'm certainly eager to play my part in doing what I can while I'm here, leave it better than I found it. So I think those are going to be your keynote issues next year. There's a little bit of discussion being whispered about the possibility of mimicking the structure of Ohio, maybe a 5-day gun, 5-day muzzleloader. But again, none of these things are set in stone. There's no meeting agenda formally crafted. These are just kind of whispers, between teammates and things like that, and cups of coffee. So we'll see what happens. But I do anticipate that there's going to be a really nice finished product on the table next spring from both the UP and the LP teams, because we're going to have a nice long dose of time. We've got positive momentum. So the hunting public in the state of Michigan should expect something very nice in 26.
This excites me.
Yeah,
excites
for sure.
me. I'm not privy to
let's
a
open
lot
up
of
the
the
Wild
information.
West here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just going to say, I'm not privy to a lot of the information that the deer advisory team has. I get tidbits here and there from those that know, but one of the things that I've been talking a lot about was a drastic change, something as a $1 that might encourage some more hunters to do a little doe control, so hearing something like that, I just know how great Michigan could be. I really do. I think we could see a whole shift here in the future for the next generation, even after me. And man, it's just an exciting time to think about something like that. It really is. I don't know that we'll get the pushback that the DNR really expects. I think if we can keep bringing the average hunter out to these meetings, I think they might get the support they're looking for.
I really do feel that we've hit that breakover point in the state of Michigan. And I can't say it any other way than it's just a feeling. And I've been doing this work a long time. And I believe that Michigan is honestly and truly ready for change. And the table is set for big things.
That's good to hear. That's encouraging to hear. And you probably have that more so from a behind the scenes look too, but that's really encouraging to hear and of course to see coming out of last Thursday. So kind of want to open up the wild, wild west here a little bit, but for those of you watching at home, drop your wish list in the comments below of what changes you would like to see in the state of Michigan and specify if you're talking specifically statewide, Lower Peninsula or Upper Peninsula. I'd be curious to hear what people, what they would like to see as we look forward to 2026. Let's talk about, we did have a question here and we can kind of discuss this a little bit. So Mike Jasso asked, why doesn't Michigan go to a $1 state? Well, that sounds like that could be on the table. So, Robert, let's start with you. You're up there in the APR zone, which is something unique in the state of Michigan. What is your thoughts on a $1 tag or perhaps expanding the APR zone?
Well, I'll say this. I'm going to hurt some feelings right now when I tell you this, but it is what it is. I personally think a statewide APR would totally help this state in just huge ways. Now you're going to have the guy that's there you go. See, told you. But I mean, you're going to have the guy that's going to say, well, I'm hunting my own property. Why can't I shoot the first spike that walks out? I mean, no matter what. This is where I think our biggest battle is going to become is you have the APR guys and then you have the $1 guys. If we could somehow get everybody on the same page or close to the same page and come to an agreement, I mean, this state could do huge things. Don't get me wrong. But after watching what the APR has done here in the Northwest 13, like I would be all for an APR statewide. Now, I will say this. When they first put it in up here, I was absolutely I hated it. The first 2 years, I was like, I can't believe this. There's a buck, I can't shoot it. Oh, here's a buck, can't shoot it. But now that it's been in place and I'm seeing what it's done, what it's continuing to do, I would be all for it. Now, a lot of people they're gonna say, no, you can't tell me what I can and can't shoot. But when I look at the caliber of the buck that was coming out of here before the APR up into what we are harvesting now, it's night and day. And I don't know, I guess then you're going to get the guys that are going to come in and say, oh, well, you're just a trophy hunter. Well, yeah, don't get me wrong. I like a nice rack. But in the same hand, if you're shooting that 1.5-year-old spike, but then you turn around the following year and you shoot that 3.5, 4.5-year-old buck, the body size difference on them is insane. And a lot of people don't realize that. My thing is if you're a meat hunter, why are you not taking more does like everybody should be doing? That seems to be the big thing. We need more does taken. We need more does taken. Up here, I mean, I can't say for like the counties to the north of me, but I would say around here, the buck to doe ratio is getting way better than it ever used to be. I mean, before you could see 25, 30 does and you'd have one spike chasing that whole group of does across the county. Now you have a doe go through and here goes a buck. Oh, here comes another one. It's definitely made a huge difference, but I don't know. That's going to be our biggest battle is getting the $1 guys and the APR guys to all come together and stop butting heads and pointing fingers and get on the same page and do like what Jordan and the UP has done and get to these meetings and start voicing our opinions, because Jordan made it, and what he did and everybody else did that was pushing for the doe with the bow. I mean, it proves a point. You show up, you voice your opinion, and I mean, yeah, everybody can't make it there. And hopefully with what Jordan was talking about of getting these meetings moved to a weekend, we can get more guys in there. and that would give more of an opportunity of some of the guys around the state, like say me and Josh, to be able to talk. We're both in the lower peninsula, but he's in, the way lower peninsula compared to us. So I don't know. I'd like to see the changes. No matter what, at the end of the day, we need change in Michigan, because what they have done now, I don't know. I think we're headed in the right direction, but we just need to keep this momentum going.
Yeah, I think when you look at what they've tried to do to incentivize doe harvest, obviously it's failed miserably, especially when you look at, with the mandatory reporting coming through. It's still substantial, the amount of bucks actually harvested to does. So Josh, I kind of want to move to you next, since you've hunted in a couple other different states with different rules and regulations. Your thoughts on a 1 buck tag or APRs in the state of Michigan?
So, it, like he said, it's a controversial topic, right? Hunting Illinois last year was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life, like my whole life. It summed up into 9 days. I passed the buck first day on the stand within the first hour that was bigger than anything I've ever shot here. And then, I almost hit like 3 more with my truck driving in the morning that were just, really great deer. And it was a 1 buck state, right? So for out of towners, I'm not sure what the resident tags are like. They might be a little bit different, but for non-res, it's 1 buck. And I seen a ton of concentrated rut activity. And, that's all because of that balance. It was amazing. I've always been a fan of the thought of APRs. I really have. I think that it might encourage some guys to take more does. I think it maybe allows another deer to graduate, past that yearling stage, which is the purpose of it. And kind of encourages a guy to let another buck pass to shoot a doe, right? But my concern with APRs is that it's never going to pass here. So I think we have a way better shot of passing a 1 buck state here. And it's just one of those situations where I don't want to go so far and ask for so much that we get nothing done, because that's the way government works, right? Everybody tries to take so much and then nothing passes. And I think if you went the 1 buck route, then there's a lot more happy people. I think there's guys that can shoot whatever they want to shoot. And I think we have a way better chance of getting something like that passed here. And, in the guys that I talk to in my group, we're all kind of the same mindset. What can we actually push for that we really think will pass? And I think as of recent, it's kind of been that 1 buck camp where we just all kind of think that this might be the way to get change.
Yeah, that's it's interesting to hear that down in Illinois. So Jordan, your thoughts? 1 buck tag, APRs, none of it.
Gonna have to give me a second to compose myself, because Robert hurt my feelings earlier.
Well, you only got one, so you should be fine by now.
Lord knows that's right. So, it's not a real big secret to those that know me that I haven't been the biggest fan of APRs. Do I think that they have merit in certain situations? Yes, I do. I think that in the right conditions, that it is a valid management tool that can have a positive effect. My concern is it the right tool, broad brush? And I'll give you an example. Here in the far northern end of deer range in the state of Michigan, up in the northwest UP, our deer do more with less calorically than I would argue any other deer in the lower 48. They don't have a ton of quality food. Winter is long, it's brutal, it's cold, they're run down. The bucks just don't have a whole ton of calories on the whole to put into headgear, because that's the last place calories go, is headgear. you hear the guys, they get in the weeds on the selenium deficiency in the soil. That's something that I've heard brought up many times over, the different minerals that they need that are deficient here. We also have areas of the UP where we have a really strong no brow tine gene. Over the years, I've had a handful of 3.5-year-old 6 points that were absolute tanks, just hammers, no brow tines. That's quite prevalent. For me, I don't think an APR is the answer here. I'm not going to say it isn't the answer, maybe where Robert lives, because I think that we all tend to know our own geographic area most intimately. And that's where it's so important for hunters to have respectful, civil dialogue and sit across the table from one another and just share their experiences and talk about this stuff. And yeah, I'm a data junkie, right? I want you to show me the evidence, show me the proof, show me the pie charts and the bar graphs and the, air quotes, peer-reviewed, sound scientific evidence. I like all that stuff. And there's a basis for that. But I think that there's something experientially that we gain from each other when we have these conversations. And, I think that one buck can work where APRs does not for this reason. If you impose an MAPR, whatever it is, 3 points, 4 points, whatever, I don't care what it is. If you impose a mandatory antler point restriction, the stated goal is we're just trying to get bucks one more year, right? That's the big thing. We want them to live past 1.5 to 2.5. Maybe if we're lucky, a few of the 2.5 see 3.5. I don't know many 3.5-year-old bucks in Michigan. Most of them don't see their birthday. That's reality. So what happens, instead of trailer fulls of dead spike horns and 4 points, now we have trailer fulls of dead 6 points and basket 8s. What did we change? Because the goal should be education, to change hunter mentality, to have them more stewardship minded, more conscious of the impact that their trigger squeeze or their release squeeze has on the resource, better informed decisions. And I don't think that APRs change hunter mentality. They just defer the same mentality the next age class up, because the guy is still going to shoot the first legal buck no matter what, whether there's a 3 points on the side or there's not. There's that cross section of people, they're going to shoot the first legal buck. And I think that one buck tag allows what I'll call that social flexibility, where the guys that really just have not a problem in the world shooting that spike horn at 8:05 November 15th, they can do that. But you only get one, not two, you get one. And for the guys that are more management conscious, that are more stewardship minded, however you want to term it, they want to match wits with the best Mother Nature has to offer. They want to duke it out with the King of the North and risk eating that tag soup. They can do that too. And I think that one buck allows everybody the latitude to, air quotes, hunt your hunt, to do what you want to do. But I think that with respect to the UP, one buck is also necessary for helping to tighten up the sex ratios. We've got does coming out of our ears, and I don't think that we have enough bucks. We've got simultaneously a shortage of bucks. And again, I'm not going to get into the biology. I promised I wouldn't. But that hyper imbalance for 10 years has contributed to heightened buck mortality. So we're going to take a few does with archery tackle, and I'd like to see us conservatively back off the bucks a little bit at the same time. Get the buck numbers to come up, bring the doe numbers down slightly, and I think we'll find a really good sweet spot there. And I think one buck is the answer for that in the UP. As far as one buck application in the Lower Peninsula, I forget where the research in question is, but there was some DNR survey data out there that stated the average Michigan hunter wants to shoot 1.3 deer per year. So that guarantees if you go to one buck, they're going to shoot a doe, because those guys got to get their 0.3 deer, right? So you're incentivizing antlerless harvest a bit there, which I think is really critical. And I know there's been some discussion about even like a earn a buck type system or a earn a second buck system. I'm not going to get too deep in that because that's the Lower Peninsula DATS arena. I'm not going to stick my toes in their swimming pool too far, but I think that it could help incentivize antlerless harvest down there as well. So where I land, I would be more supportive of one buck biologically and socially. But as I stated, I think APRs, perhaps in certain situations, in certain areas, are also a tool to be used.
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal is to try to bring more balance to the deer herd, whether you're talking UP or Lower Peninsula. That sex ratio is just, it's out of whack no matter where you're at in the state. And in southern Michigan, especially southern lower, it's the deer density is just so high, but they do have more ag and more, just more habitat that can hold the deer a little bit better. But Jack brings up a good point, and just something I was going to go with here is, only time will tell. No matter what we implement, whether it's a one buck tag or APRs, our Michigan hunter is going to finally start shooting more does, because that's been the goal, it seems like, for the last several years, and they've tried everything. There's parts of the state you can buy unlimited $5 doe tags. I mean, a $5 tag is pretty cheap for a nice, big mature doe. So time will tell what, if it does pass, and whatever does pass, if Michigan hunters will take the bait, so to speak, which is a good segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about. And a question that's come up here several times is baiting. Obviously, there's been things floating around online about possible legislature going around to allow a license to allow hunters to bait again. So I want to go there and kind of get your thoughts, and those of you watching at home listening in tonight, I want to hear your thoughts too in the comment. But Josh, let's start with you. Your thoughts on baiting and a possible license to bait.
Not a fan. Not a fan. But here's why. I think we have so many ways, a couple reasons. So I think we have so many ways where we're just making hunting easier on the next generation coming up. It's all the technology. It's, crossbows shooting 60 yards. It's, there's a whole conjunction of things. And aside from the science and, the CWD issues and things like that, if we're not even speaking of that, I think baiting is just taking it a next step to give it a little easier on the kids. And I know that historically is, Michigan, even when I started, hunting back in the day, baiting was legal. But that's one reason. I like to get back to kind of grassroots type stuff. And another reason is that I think it triggers hunter conflict. Myself being a state land hunter, I don't hunt private except for, like crop damage and things like that. You got the guy that goes out, he sets a stand up, and that's his area, right? He's going to fight you over where that stand is. And then you add in a bait pile, and you're just adding a complexity to that. He sets his bait pile down, and you're not supposed to hunt within 200 yards of it. And I've seen these go back and forth where guys just fight over these areas. And I think baiting just adds to hunter conflict. And it's really something I think this whole conversation that we've had, we're trying to get away from fighting with each other. So I'm not a fan of baiting. I'm really not. I've never felt the need to use bait to kill deer. And that's just where I'm at. I'm not a fan.
Robert, your thoughts on the rumor mill of baiting coming back and a license potentially needed to bait in the future?
I mean, I guess I could see allowing baiting, but kind of like Josh said, I think it creates more of a conflict than it does anything. He's right when he says, this guy comes in, he puts a bait pile down, and all of a sudden, oh, this is my spot. You can't hunt here. You can't hunt nowhere near me. If you're on the same trail, well, that's my trail, so you can't hunt there. Now, on the side of them bringing it back with a $20 tag, to me, that's just a money grab. I mean, they're already talking about jumping our licenses up pretty much all the way across the board. And to go from something that was free and legal to now you got to pay for it. I mean, come on. That just doesn't make sense to me. I think, like with the Liberty hunt, the youth hunt, I'm all for it. Like, especially with the youth. If throwing a bag of corn out in the middle of a field or the woods, whatever, brings in a doe or a spike, whatever, and that youth gets to shoot their first deer over bait, so be it, because that's going to help continue what we do now. But for the regular season, I don't agree with it. I'd rather see it stay the way it is, no baiting, and just be done with it. But in the same hand, I'm sure Josh can shadow this too. You go out on state land even now with the baiting ban, there's bait piles everywhere. And I mean, if the DNR was so worried about making money, get your officers out there and start writing tickets for all these bait piles. I don't know how many piles I seen last year, and guy be like, oh, I got a warning. I got told I got to clean it up and throw it in the back of my truck and never come back to this spot again. Well, I mean, I don't know how much those tickets were, but I know they're not cheap. So why are we not writing tickets? But now all of a sudden, oh, we're going to charge you $20 and hey, you can bait now. There's too much of it that just doesn't make sense. I don't agree with any of it.
Yeah, just as a reminder, that's coming through the legislature too. So it's, not necessarily the DNR. There's not a lot of biology behind it. It does sound like it is a money grab if it does pass. And I'll say this: I've been hunting almost as long as Josh has been alive, just to age myself a little bit. And I hunted over bait, and I've also not hunted over bait. And I can't say it ever gave me a huge distinct advantage. Obviously, it did allow the deer to come directly into where I wanted them when it did work. But so can the same thing can happen when you put your boots to the ground and really scout and get to really learn the deer and how they use that area that you're hunting. So, Jordan, your thoughts on, well, UP can still bait, right? That never went away up there. So, I mean, what do you think about possible legislature passing and a license to bait for those of us in the Lower Peninsula?
Put your mask on, show me your papers, and purchase your rights back, comrade. So, problem number one. There's going to be a real collision here of ideology. If everything that we're told about CWD is true, if I pay $20, does that all go away? There's an interesting juxtaposition there to reconcile. Either the science is everything that we've been told, and there's no way in hell we should be baiting, or it's not exactly what we've been told, and we're going to make a quick buck. I understand the department needs money. They need funding. That's a whole big discussion in and of its own. I think we need to fund our programs. We need to fund our DNR staff. And there's some people that are adamantly opposed, and they point right to, big salaries of executive brass. And I get that. I do. I understand that. I share some of that sentiment. But at the same time, because there's a couple of people making big money, I'm not going to say that the rank and file biologists doing the job, wearing muck boots and driving a Chevrolet shouldn't get a nice paycheck, because they sure as hell should. And it costs money to do stuff, right? Like Does it cost you the same amount of money today to fill up your gas tank on your truck that it did 10, 15, 20 years ago? Does your loaf of bread cost the same? Does your gallon of milk cost the same? I could go on, but you get the point. The department is not immune to rising costs of doing business and inflation. That's a reality that we all face, and that includes the DNR. And that's something that we got to make our peace with. Good biology, good conservation costs, and I believe that we have the right people that want to do good things and take it a good direction. That said, I certainly would love to see like a line item budget and some accountability about how the hunter dollars are being used, where money is being spent. Is money being dumped back into the general fund at the end of the year? I think that there are some questions that should be answered and some accountability, but that notwithstanding, I think that we need to do what we can to fund. But is it the right thing to gouge somebody $20 to put a bait pile in the woods? No, I don't believe it is. I think there's better mechanisms to do that. And I think something like that should come in the form of a budgetary appropriation through the state of Michigan and not an individual gouge imposed on the hunter. They're not going to like that. Because by and large, hunter disposition is, oh, now you want me to pay more for crappy management. Yeah, right. That's the rank and file sentiment. Whether it's accurate, whether it's true, whether it isn't, I'm just expressing that's how a lot of people feel. They don't want to pay more for less. Consequently, I've had other people say, now if the department is going to do good things and they're going to manage the herd right, and we're going to turn a corner here, I got no problem opening my wallet. I've heard a lot of that too. And I think that's fair. As far as the legislature doing it, I'm conflicted. A lot of people believe that the NRC has sole authority, and they do not. In fact, the NRC has co-authority with the legislature. So they both can take a swing at the ball. Typically, the legislature tries to keep their hands out of the cookie jar, and there's some private, luncheon conversations and those kinds of things that steer the ship. But typically, the legislature tries to let the commission handle it. In this specific case, I think there's been a lot of pressure applied from some members of the public and some stakeholder groups directly to legislators' offices. And I think that's why you're seeing this come through the legislature. And I have plus and minus there too. I think when necessary, and I employed some legislative pressure to get Doe with the Bow reinstated, right? So I'm going to point the finger in my own face. That was a positive thing. And the legislature exerted positive pressures on the NRC to do the right thing. However, that knife can cut the other way too, right? Not everybody's idea that they go to their representative or their senator with is necessarily grounded in science and biologically reasonable. There's going to be some bad recommendations. So we have to be careful how we use the legislature's involvement, because that can be a bad thing and we can end up royally violating Prop G to heck and back. So I would be cautious in when and how we do that. It has to be done sparingly. I think that there's a place for baiting. I do. My own hunting experiences, I've got 30 years hunting the backcountry of the UP. There's stands I'll put out some bait. There's stands I don't. It depends on where I'm at. It depends on what I'm doing. There's all kinds of variables. When it comes to, my little boys, yeah, you bet. I'm going to throw some carrots and some corn out there at 20, 25 yards. And they just love watching deer. They love seeing deer. There's something to be said for that. And just getting the kids comfortable being in the presence of deer for 15, 20, 30 minutes at a shot where you got 10 sets of eyeballs right on top of you. Holy cow. You learn how to be quiet. You learn how to move. You learn how to do all those little nuances and get your bow out or get your gun up or whatever it is. It's a great learning experience. And I think especially for young hunters with disabilities, having a deer that is static and standing on a bait pile presents a very clean, clear, ethical shot, which is also a benefit. There's people out there that say, well, you ain't even a real hunter if you're using bait. Yeah, okay, well, you're not a real hunter if you're not wearing a loincloth and moccasins. So let's not even get into that discussion, right? I think there's no end to that, and it's ridiculous about who's a real man. That's nonsense. That being said, I don't know where that issue is going to go. That's been a hot topic for a while. I do like what Robert said, and I'm going to second that very strongly. If you're going to ban it, then enforce the ban. We don't need a scofflaw, okay? Because there's guys out there like Robert or like myself or like Josh or like you, Tim, that are going to obey the law. We may not necessarily agree. We may think, well, that's really stupid, but hey, you know what? That is the law, and I'm going to obey the law. Meanwhile, everybody around us isn't obeying the law, and they're all shooting deer, and the guy that obeys the law don't. Well, there's something that ain't right about that. That ain't right at all. So if we're going to have the law on the books, the law needs to be enforced without question. And the first argument is going to be, well, we don't have enough COs. Let me tell you what, you start writing $500 baiting tickets, bait piles are going to dry up real fast because the word's going to get around. Johnny Greenpants is out here with his ticket book again. Everybody clean up your stuff. It's going to take one weekend of that. I don't know about you guys, but a $500 fine would be a pretty good kick in the shorts for me. I think that they have to enforce. And if you're not going to enforce, then you have to repeal. It really comes down to that. And ultimately, I think that, the chronic wasting disease issue I'll classify it as emerging science. I still, in everything that I've heard and seen and studied on my own time, I don't know. Is CWD real? Yes, I think it's real. Is it everything they say it is? I have my suspicions. I don't know. And I don't think that there's anybody in the country who can stand up and definitively say, yes, this, and this, A, B, and C in this way because 1, 2, and 3. It's not definitive. And I think that we created a policy, no baiting, to preempt a perceived deer pandemic. We had to, air quotes, do something. Boy, that's familiar, isn't it? Where have I heard that before? Sometimes when we do something to do something, we do the wrong thing, and we end up having to walk it back. And I think that could be what happens in this scenario, and it could be a little bit painful for some people to have to do that.
So I got a question.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
I just want to say, Jordan's the areas that Jordan's hunting are a lot more deep woods than a lot of the stuff that we have down here in, zone 3, right? So when I say hunter conflict, like Jordan probably doesn't run into that quite as much as some of the guys down in zone 3 do, right? A lot deeper woods, vast, things of that nature. So like, because I seen the comment on here about a food plot being no different than a bait pile. And I do kind of feel that same way. This guy's private property, again, assuming that the science doesn't apply, right? If CWD is a farce, just say that CWD is a farce. And a food plot and a bait pile are essentially the same thing, as far as I'm concerned. If you have a food plot that's specifically there to feed deer and attract deer, it's a bait pile in my mind. But would you guys support bringing back baiting if it was private land only in some of these more metro areas where there are more, more people, more hunters per square mile, call it? Like, does that make more sense? Because it's not vast and it might cut down on that hunter conflict a little bit.
So I was going to say, and I'm just going to share my opinion. I think if you're going to bring back baiting, then reestablish baiting to what it was. because they did away with what it was based on science, which now it seems like might be getting walked back a little bit. But I say open it back up to public and private land. And I think it was I'm trying to remember now, but I believe it was 10 gallons had to be spread out in a 10-foot by 10-foot area. Bring it back to what it was. I'll kind of let the guys answer your question, but I want to drive another point here. But I mean, do you guys think there should be specifications on baiting if it's brought back to what Josh said, private land in certain zones? I mean, your thoughts there.
Go ahead, Robert.
So the only issue that you would see with, for say, baiting on private land only would be you're going to have the people complaining that have the private property. Well, I've got too many deer. And then you're going to have the guys on the state land that are saying, well, we're not seeing anything. What are you talking about? Where are all the deer at? I mean, that could be a serious conflict. But in the same hand, I think that somehow, some way, some of these properties, like especially down in your area, Josh, the deer numbers on the private are just insane. But then you step off into the public land and it's like half of what it is on that private. Where up here, I mean, it's a little bit different. Yeah, we don't have quite the numbers that you guys have down there, but we've also got the big timber up here, which you guys don't. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of one of them catch-22s, really. No matter what you do, one side's not going to be happy. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say exactly how that would go, but I think with the baiting on private that would be a problem in the long run. I think it would hurt more people than it would do good, because you've already got the landowners that are screaming that they've got too many deer, or the farmers that are complaining about crop damage, stuff like that. I mean, there's so many different ways that could go, but I could see it getting ugly really quick.
I can see that.
Yeah, just reestablish something, and then it might complicate it too much. But Jordan, your thoughts?
Well, I think especially in Lower Michigan, it's so highly parcelized, and I would say the majority of hunting land in the Lower Peninsula is private land. Whether that's a timber company or whether that's, Tim White and Josh Arbogast remains to be seen, but a lot of it is privately held. So I think if you reinstated for private under the auspices of not wanting to go too broad brush, I think that's exactly what it does, is it does go broad brush, and the state land hunter kind of just gets the shaft. I don't know. The way I see it is it's got to be an all or nothing proposition. If you start splicing hairs and trying to keep everybody happy, no one's going to be happy. And if I know anything about Michigan deer management, it's this: if you can get 51% of guys happy, you won. So I'll take 51%. I guess I really, for me, I'm the science nerd, right? So the CWD thing was the driver for all of this fear that there was this world-ending pandemic that was going to sweep through our deer herd and destroy it. Well, I think, and I'm just going to walk out on the limb and cut it off behind myself here. I'll take a little risk. Given the fact that CWD is, air quotes, highly contagious and always fatal, and given the fact that it was well established that concentration of deer accelerates the communication of this disease, and given the fact that we know darn good and well, by and large, by majority, Michigan hunters are still baiting, even beyond the baiting ban, I have a hard time believing that everything we're being told about CWD is as they say it is, or I think we'd be neck deep in chronic wasting disease. And I'll just use the Upper Peninsula for an example. Many years ago, we had that one case of chronic wasting disease in a doe down in the southern UP. There's so many alarm bells that go off in my head about that. First of all, you're talking about a doe family group. Those critters are in there licking and nuzzling and grooming each other and doing all that stuff. That's what a doe family group does 10 hours a day, is lick each other's face. And you're telling me only one of those deer was positive? Nonsense. And then you've got the yarding habits of UP deer, right? You're going to cram thousands of deer into a deer yard, nuts to butts, all winter long, eating nose to nose, licking, grooming, doing all these things. In a deer yard, if you had one CWD positive animal, it would spread like wildfire on a prairie. But it didn't. So the rational mind starts to ask questions, because 1 + 1 doesn't give me 2. And I'm not accusing the DNR of being full of crap or some grand conspiracy. I'm just saying, from a logical blue-collar man standpoint, it doesn't make sense to me. And I want to see more science. I want to see definitive proof. And I think that the driver for all natural resource policy has to be sound scientific evidence. And if you can show me the evidence to justify the regulation, I will back it. And that's where I come down on the baiting issue. Show me the justification for continuing the baiting ban. Show me the science. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, to Jordan's point, their primary sense is their sense of smell. So they're constantly licking, and they're putting their nose, they're rubbing, they're licking, they're urinating all over the place. That's how they communicate with each other for the most part. So yeah, I think a bait pile. But one thing I kind of wanted to circle back to is, with baiting, either you bring it back or you don't. But the whole thought of a license where you have to pay a fee to now establish a food source, I think if we open that door, what else are we possibly opening that door to? When you look at other states that have banned the use of trail cameras, um, could that be, as we go down the road? Well, if you want to use a trail camera, you're going to have a license to place one on state land. If you want to put a food plot on your own property, are you going to have to buy a specialized agriculture license down the road? Does it start to become a thing where they nickel and dime us to get to death because we've gave them an inch and now they're going to take a mile from us? Any thoughts on that?
I think that's a very real fear. I really do. That the nickel and dime, take a little bit here and there. We see that, and I talked to some of the predator calling guys after the NRC meeting, and that's their concern with the rest period of coyote season is, what's next? Is it 6 months? Is it 8 months? Like what? Because that's how things get done. They take a little bit here, they take a little bit there. And I think it's a very real concern, because you hear it all the time that hunting's turning into a rich man sport, right? I mean, I hear it a couple times a year. Guys complain about the cost of stands and the cost of bows. A new bow, $1,000 plus is like, it's crazy. And, we really don't want that to happen. But I think it's a very real concern. It's something I honestly didn't think about with debating. Where could this go? It's terrifying, to be honest with you.
I agree with some of Josh's sentiment, but I'm going to play devil's advocate on the other side of the coin, and this is where I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings, like Robert says. A Michigan hunter hears that his deer license might cost him another $20, or his fishing license might cost him another $10, or his, insert whatever. It's going to cost him more. Oh, that guy is not going to stop buying his Budweiser. That guy is not going to stop smoking his Marlboro Reds. That guy's not going to stop, placing his bets on football games. Whatever it is that you're into, your Sunday tea times or your bass fishing, you're still going to find money for the things that you really want to do. and everybody is going to keep doing those things. You know, I've got a family of 6. I got 4 sons and a wife who hunt, who fish, who do everything that I do. We got multiple ORV stickers. We got multiple park passes. We got multiple boat stickers. I am in it neck deep. So if anybody gets to whine about paying more, I get to whine. But I'm not gonna. And the reason that I'm not gonna is because these are the things that I love. And these are the activities that my family loves. These are the things that matter most to us. I'm not on a bowling team. I don't bet on football games. I don't really partake in the bar scene. And I'm not knocking people who choose to do those things with their time. But for me, I've made decisions with my pocketbook about the things that are most important to me. And I think that Michigan hunters had that choice in front of them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how a lot of these things play out as we go down the road. So, well, guys, we're about an hour and 20 minutes in, so we'll probably wrap it up here for the evening. So, Josh, we want to thank you for joining us again. Just we talked about it at the beginning, but as a reminder, where can people catch you on social media? What's the best places to look for Josh?
The Michigan Whitetail Project on Instagram and Facebook now. It's just a visual representation of all the facts and data, you know, just trying to get more people involved. So if anybody's interested, it's really something that we wanted to get where we can get representatives going to every meeting so we can come back and report and share information. It doesn't place the personal burden of going to every single meeting per guy. And yeah, if you can help out with that, you know, just get in touch with me through there, follow us, see if you can learn something or share some information yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Josh. You know, you're a shining example of how just one person can have a voice and can make an impact. You don't have to be part of a special interest or belong to this committee or that. You know, our voice is the most powerful thing we have. So thank you for using it and standing up for our rights as a hunter. So, Jordan, again, thank you for joining us tonight and just everything that you do on that DAT and all the hard work and sacrifices you put in. And congratulations again on getting that pass through this last week. So, Robert,
I just want to
thank you for joining us. Oh, go ahead, Jordan.
I just want to take a quick second and go on record saying that, yeah, you know, I did spend a lot of years working on some of these issues and a lot of personal money, personal time, etc. But I can't overemphasize that Jordan Hoover didn't do this. That there was so many other people that came to my aid, that stood beside me, that helped throughout the process. You know, Josh Arbogast played a role. You know, Senator Ed McBroom played a role. Chad Stewart played a role. You know, Mike Kettler played a role. My good friend Elliot Hubbard and his wife Rochelle, they played a role. You know, there were so many people involved, all behind the scenes. It would take me an hour to share with you all the people and entities and organizations and the things that they did and the ways that they contributed. This was a total team effort, and that's why it was successful. I just want to make sure that I give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely. They say every good man has an army behind him, and Jordan definitely had an army and a lot of other guys with boots on the ground fighting. So thank you to everyone. And again, Jordan, thank you. Robert, thanks for joining us tonight. Also from Grand Traverse County. You getting back out chasing turkey tomorrow or what?
No, with the weather getting all hot, I'm going to play it off a couple days as temperatures are supposed to drop back down. So once they drop back down, I'll get back out.
Yeah, you know, you need to just set up your hunting blind and put an AC unit in the window. You're good to go.
No, I'm not built like that.
So,
Love it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We will be back. Jordan, we're back tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, tomorrow evening we are going to host Mike Kettler, who is the president of the Michigan chapter of the National Deer Association, and he also happens to be the chairman of the Lower Peninsula DAT team.
Excellent. Looking forward to talking to him tomorrow night. And then we also have a guest lined up for Wednesday. We're going to talk with the folks out at Double D Ranch. They're an organization that gets folks that, were kind of dealt a wrong hand in life, gives them the opportunity to get out, get behind a gun, get behind a bow, and share that experience that we get to experience every time we hit the woods. So again, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We'll see you back tomorrow night at 7 p.m.